So my first question for you, I'm gonna start real simple.
Okay.
The first question for you is, can you tell me who you are and what is it that you do?
Okay. Hi. If I just say
Yeah.
hi. I'm Alyssa Cooper, and honestly, what I do is I just help raise the vibration of the collective in everything that I do.
Can you tell me, you can go into as much detail as you want, but can you tell me how you came to be here at this point?
Yeah. So, 2 years ago, August 31st, my husband passed away, and we had been married for 16 years, and we celebrated our anniversary on a cruise in Europe. And on our last port, I found him in the shower, and he had a brain bleed here and here, and he got, we were able to get him to the hospital, and he was pretty much fully recovered. But 5 days later, the doctor had made a mistake, and his port had fallen out, and the doctor made the choice of not putting the port back in, and that ultimately was why he died. And up until that point, David and I were living a life that we didn't need a vacation from, and we were helping others do the same. And after he died, I had to kind of just burn everything down and restart, because we were known as the Mullers and promises to keep for all of our tribes. And so after his celebration, which was October 30th, a couple months later, I made the decision to live. And when I asked myself that question, do you want to live? The answer was definitely yes. And then the following question was how? And when I got to the how is how 2 years later, I'm here now with Cocoon to Butterfly and the Quantum Healer. And it literally is my soul's purpose. And I believe that everything was as it should have been with David leaving this plane. He's still here helping me, but just in another area.
So tell me more about your. I want to know about your relationship with David and how how important, how core you guys were to each other's dynamic before he passed.
Yeah. So we met as teenagers. He was my very first boyfriend. I was 15 and he was 17. And, one of the things out the gate that I was truly like mesmerized by David was he had a toothbrush in the back of his pocket. And I asked him when I first met him, I said, why do you have a toothbrush in the back of your pocket? He's like, because I don't know where I'm going to land. Like, I definitely want to be able to brush my teeth and take care of my teeth wherever I end up laying my head at night. And I was just shook by that because at 15, I had lived a very regimented, very disciplined life. I was an athlete, a gymnast, and ultimately my number one need is freedom. And when I heard him say that, I was like, that is freedom. And as a teenager, of course, that's, was freedom. Now, of course, that's just the beginning of freedom. But fast forward, we both, we broke up unofficially. Like, I don't think we ever had the discussion of breaking up. He lived an hour and a half north of me. And back then we didn't have cell phones. I wasn't driving. And we just kind of went on our way. We met through my aunt. She was like a block mom in Everett, where everybody kind of hung out. And I met him through my cousins. And so through our years, we married other people and I had a child and he had a child. And we didn't really see each other very often, but we would often talk through my cousins about each other, kind of keeping in touch. And then when I was going through my divorce with my first husband, the father of my child, my aunt passed away. And one of the things that she used to say is, if it's the last thing I ever do, it's going to be to get you guys together. And, while we were both with other people, it was very that was not okay, not cool. But the interesting thing is David wasn't with anyone at the time that my aunt passed, and I was in the middle of my divorce. And it sure enough was how we got back together. So we were married within a year, and we started right away just building goal lists as a couple. We wanted to have freedom and have multiple streams of income. And so, David used to say, like, we had a lot of failing forwards, a lot of ideas didn't come to fruition, but they all opened up doors to the end result, which we ended up having 6 residual income streams, one of which was a brick and mortar business that I had had before David and I got married. But one thing that he did that added such incredible value to my it was a gymnastics school was he helped us systemize it and automate it and put all the directors in their strength zones, and then build job descriptions and just what is going to help Black Hills Gymnastics like accelerate and be the best for its community. And so we just built that life, and we had experienced the end of our goal 2 months before he passed. We had everything kind of mapped out for 18 months of where we were going to travel, what we were going to do, celebrating the sale of my gym, because we were putting in procedures for that. And so, we were beginning our life just free and truly without worry of any financial needs, and helping others do the same. That we're very passionate about living in their passion, what their purpose was, and setting it up to where either they did it like us, where we had a work life just interwove, or if you had a work that you're passionate about, but outside of that is maybe a passion that didn't make money, but it's what sustains your vibrancy, raised your frequency, your internal joy. So we help people do that as well, because sometimes you can't intermix them. You can't, it's not necessarily possible for you to make the money that you want to make in a passion that you have, but you sure could do a sustainable job that you enjoy, so that then you can live what brings you joy and gives, I believe, joy to the world, in the passion that you have. Because where I got here after David died is I discovered that while we lived a beautiful life and I felt so fulfilled, I really wasn't living my soul's purpose. And after David's death and my healing journey, this is my soul's purpose. It's Cocoon the Butterfly and the Quantum Healer.
So can you explain what the core philosophy behind your healing methodology is, and how it helps individuals overcome their trauma or just rise to a higher vibration?
Yeah. So grief is one of the lowest forms of vibrations. It's very similar to jealousy and envy and shame, and it keeps us from living in our gifts and keeps us from living in joy. And so while I was going through the healing journey, basically to at first it just was like to get out of bed, just to I couldn't even think about like joy. I just needed to get up and move. And so because of my background of being a gymnastics coach, I often would reverse engineer action steps. And so when I was moving forward, I was told, basically like a download came to me that said, this is going to be nothing like you've done before. The way that David and I built businesses is we had the end in mind, and we reverse engineered 90 days at a time to build out the business. And each week we had a goal progression session where we would make adjustments, and then every 90 days we're allowed to do large pivots. But until the 90 days, we could not pivot. And so what I was told is, this is going to be nothing like that. You're going to take one step at a time. And yes, the end result is for you to live. So that's how Cocoon the Butterfly actually started. Was my end result was to actually live the life that I never thought I was worthy of. That obviously unfolded as I was healing. At the beginning, it was just to like live. And what ended up happening was it was 8 stages that I went through. And it started with grief all the way to the end result of freedom. And so in those 8 stages, there's 3 phases. And Cocoon the Butterfly is exactly that. And it will be something that I truly believe will raise the vibration of those that want to move from grief. And you don't have to get all the way to freedom, because it's a lot of introspective, a lot of hard work, to really go introspective into be honest with your dark and your light, and to have those conversations that are so, so painful. Yeah.
So what makes your approach different from traditional forms of therapy or other types of programs that attempt to do a similar thing?
Yeah. First of all, I want to say, like, therapy, definitely get that if you need it. This is not instead of. I truly feel like for me, therapy wasn't the way for me to go. I just knew intuitively that wasn't for me. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist by any means, and this program does not, take away from that. I think truly what the difference is when we're born with a contract that we signed, or an assignment, if you will, of living in our gifts. And so what Cocoon to Butterfly does is it actually, while we're examining our grief and going through the stages as we're getting closer to freedom, we are discovering our gifts. And when you start living in alignment with your gifts, you no longer grieve the same way. I still grieve every day, and it's not always about David. It could be, there's lots of different ways that we grieve, but because now I know like how to go through these 8, stages, it's just very easy for me to, it's like an immediate download, and then I'm like, okay, like release that with love instead of letting it like harness me or ignore it and push it down, which then, I knew right away I was never going to do that, because that's how disease is formed, and that's how people live, with sadness, and they can't figure out why their life is not happy, and they just can't get to that place. They want to, but they just can't. They can't get there, because if you're not authentically and introspectively finding out who you are and what brings you joy and what makes you tick, then you're going to be sad for long periods of time and feel empty. There's a difference between sad, like what I went through with David, and sad of like, I don't see joy in anything. Like, I'm just not happy and I can't figure it out. And it's because you're not living in your gifts or discovering what your gifts are.
So, this is a kind of a 3-part question. We'll start with how do you discover and unlock your gifts? What's that first step look like?
Yeah. So what I did was I went back to childhood. What brought me joy? What made me laugh? What made me happy? And I started just building a list of all of that. Some of it obviously as an adult doesn't, pertain to your life now. But what I discovered is I love family. I love people. I enjoy high vibrational discussions, even as a teenager. Like I just didn't resonate with like what most teenagers do, which is like to fit in, to talk about other people and to bond in that way where you collectively are like, look at that person, or look at what are they doing. It always like had a very visceral response in my body. So I didn't know how to deal with that when you're younger. It's hard to like stand up against the grain. I just pulled myself away and I just focused on gymnastics. And then if I was ever a part of any conversations that were not positive or lifting people up, I would just walk away. So building that list, that's what I discovered as a young person. And then as a young adult, I love to travel. I love the freedom of getting to know other cultures, because I knew from a very young age that we are all actually one. Energetically, we're actually way more the same than we are different. Obviously, the differences are the gifts that we have. But as I healed myself, what I realized is we have been robbing ourselves of the collective or population, another word of saying that, like the world of people. We've been robbing ourselves of ascending in a higher frequency because we've been brainwashed is a good word, but basically educated to be individual and to get ours, like go to the top, you know, be your number one, and a lot of what's happened in the last 20 years has been very corporate based in a lot of spaces. So like there's a lead, there's a CEO, and then there's everyone else. I knew from a young age that is not actually the best for us as humanity. But as we all grow up, so did we. We had to grow up. And I think I know we're headed into this like more of one. We had to learn the hard way of learning and going through how, that made a lot of people rich and a lot of people filled with joy in a materialistic sense. And there's nothing wrong with having nice things. That's not what I'm saying at all. Like, do what brings you joy. But the point about it is when we're all living in our gifts, it raises everyone's vibration. Because while someone might love a brand new, G-Wagon and a beautiful mansion, somebody else is like, I would rather just live in the woods, and have a backpack and just love on the trees and nature. And that is as the same as somebody that has the car of their dream and the home of their dream. And living in our gifts, I believe, and making that positive frequency helps everyone step into their purpose and the life that they set out to live.
Now, once you discover what your purpose is or what like your gifts are, how do you how does your program help them guide them to that next level?
Yeah. So the way that I designed it, the download that I had was basically that this program is not going to be dependent on me. I am the conduit for it. So when I went through the stages, basically I wrote them out, and I partnered with a friend of mine who I met along the journey after David died, who has a company called Custom Box Agency. And I was told to reach out with him and build a box. Basically it's an experience that's tangible for somebody to go through all of these stages. And I will have, evergreen style videos like tutorials, but literally they could do it without me. And so they'll receive the box and they can go through it alone, or they can gather a group of people and have it like a book club, once a week. You guys all gather, you come through and you do each week. So it's 8 weeks long. The interesting thing is these 8 weeks took me a year, and then I had a gap year. So there really is no time frame, but I will teach it in 8 weeks, and then you can go back to the weeks that maybe you need a little bit more time, a little more healing, a little more growth, or self-discovery, like what happened with me. And so once you get through the 8 weeks, basically, my intention is to show you to keep going through that till you mastered it. And then, you'll always have grief in your life because it's part of an emotion that we as humans have, but you'll understand how to transform that, or I call it alchemize it into a energy that will serve you better for your joy and creating your own gifts.
So what are some of the misconceptions maybe behind this type of program? Like what would be typical naysayer,
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I think that there are going to be lots of people that aren't going to be willing to do the work because you actually have to take the time. And a lot of people are going to be, I don't have time, I have to be with my family, or I have to be at work, or I have to, there's all sorts of, excuses. One of my mentors early on in my business career said, I have to fry chicken. And I was like, what does that even mean? He goes, it doesn't matter. Like, it's just any excuse will do, And I was like, that's interesting. So there are going to be some people that aren't ready, and that's okay. The people that are ready, I believe will be drawn to this program. And it literally is, it's something I've never seen before. I've done a lot of research to try and like cross market it, with other comparisons. And there really is nothing that I have found that is the same. But I truly believe that after mine will be launched, there will be so many other people launching their programs because it will ignite something in them, and it will transform. Maybe it's someone else's path that the cocoon to butterfly lights up an idea for them, and then they create something that changes, the frequency, raises consciousness, that I've already kind of seen that as a download that will be what happens. And so I'm really excited for that.
On that topic of frequencies and downloads, what can you define what that is for someone who's just never really heard that, is not familiar with that, but what is interesting?
Yeah, so we all have them. Oftentimes it's blocked. I remember my first real download that I can remember was after I was baptized. And my grandmother is the one that, exposed me to church. And so I got baptized in the Willamette River in Oregon. And the next day I remember coming to her and saying, Grandma, God told me we're all one. We're all one. God is in us. I didn't say the divine because I didn't know that word, but basically God lives in us. We are God. And I remember like the visceral reaction of her of like, oh, that was the devil talking to you. Like, you got baptized, so you're going to be like right away attacked. And she prayed over me. And I just remember like thinking, I'm 6 years old. I'm like, wow. Like, and I just buried that. Like, I never thought about it again until later. I was like mid-30s. But it was always this subtle voice in my head that went back to that. So in answering your question about a download is, I see it in pictures and I actually hear it in voices. And so some people are going to be like, oh, that sounds kind of crazy. But once you start really becoming more introspective, quiet, alone, and are open, you'll get your download in the way that is for you. Like David used to get it in movie pictures. Like he would get it like a flowing movie and it would just go, and for me, it's more of like puzzle pieces. I'll get like these little pieces and then all of a sudden it will all go and become a fully pieced puzzle. But during the puzzle, putting it together, I get lots of signs and synchronicities. So I call them angel numbers. I see 1111 a lot. In my healing journey, I saw 333 a lot, 444 a lot, 555 a lot. So when you Google those, you can see kind of the meaning behind them. So those are downloads. But I've had them ever since I was a child, off and on. And then now I get them all the time.
So when you're, as you're seeing synchronicities and you're also receiving these downloads, in whatever way that they come at you, what are some typical ways to get in the way of that? Like, what are some ways in which we actually
block them?
Block them.
Yeah.
And how can we keep from doing that?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I think when we decide, so this is what David and I did a lot, and after his death, I realized, wow, like even though we had a great life, we were blocking a lot of our blessings that were coming in, and we made it a lot harder. But by setting up attachments and expectations to what you feel is right, and instead of going into perspective and having a feeling, like now I get a feeling in my solar plexus when things are good or when things are bad. But I didn't do that before with David. I would build out, the roadmap, and then if things came up as challenges, I used my grit and tenacity to just like forge ahead. And at times I would call them pivoting or failing forwards, where if I wouldn't have gone down this path and made this mistake or had this challenge, I wouldn't have even been at the next part. So that was my philosophy. So that's ways that you can block it by just saying, oh, this is the way, like I know it. I'm, and it's more forced. But because of my personality and my athletic background, I still was pretty successful at that. And that was one of the things that David noticed right away when we got together as adults. He's like, wow, everything you touch turns to gold. And I was like, well, not really. Like I have to work at it. But now literally, because I'm in flow, everything I touch does turn to gold. And along the way, there are learns and lessons and more healing that comes away from it. And so I look at it that way instead. Another block would be self-sabotage, self-doubt, just awful self-talk, like negativity, surrounding yourself with people that are dream crushers. And in my case, I really wasn't surrounded at all with people like that, but I was surrounded by other people that were very passionate and very successful. And so I use the analogy for them as the crab pot theory, where and you could Google this, but there's a pot of crabs, and the one crab is trying to get out of the pot, and they're climbing to the top, they're almost there, and another crab grabs them and pulls them down. You literally can see this happen. Like, this is something that is factual, that happens with crabs. And the way that I use it as an analogy is that these crabs in the pot love each other. And they're like, don't go out of the pot, it's too scary. Like, that's a scary place. Like, you're gonna get hurt, bad things are gonna happen, like the unknown is there. And so they're feeling like they're helping you, but really they're not allowing you to make the mistakes, to go through the challenges, to go to the unknown, because that is the path of, all of our soul's purpose, our dreams, our goals are achieved in the unknown.
So, do you have anyone currently that has gone through your program that can speak to the results yet, or where are you at with that?
So I'm doing a beta launch the first week of December that actually goes through the 8 stages. But along the way, I've helped so many people that have come to me, because David and I were very big on social media, and we had huge following. Everyone on our Facebook, or on mine in particular, I knew personally. So maxed out friends, and that isn't to be haughty. That's just like the influence that we had, through the years. I'm older, so I have a lot of time, and have made a lot of friends. And the thing that happened was I went very public at the very beginning. And the reason why I went very public with David's, the end of his life, was because there were so many people that were worried about me, worried about him. And so I was like, go to my Facebook. I will do a blog every day, because it was just too much for me. I needed to be very focused on him and his healing, and that's all I wanted to do. Like, I didn't want to be distracted by anything else. And so it started that way. And then after he died, it was like my release. It was like a diary. And in that was the beginning of me actually being very selfish, and selfish in a good way. Like, I didn't care who commented. I didn't care whether people liked it or not, or how many likes there were. I was never that person anyway. David was more of that. Like, he would track our results on social media, which I thought was kind of funny. But along that journey, what I found was that there were so many people that were going through grief. And it wasn't just death, it was grief. And they were following my journey, and then they would message me and just say, you helped me save my marriage. You helped me overcome the death of my child. And so I lived on Facebook showing these stages and these phases. So I believe that a lot of people have gone through it, but without the actual box. Yeah.
So this might be kind of an interesting question, but regarding spirituality in particular, how do you incorporate spirituality? Do you incorporate spirituality, and how can you? What would you say to someone who's maybe, or people with different faiths, different faith backgrounds that want to explore this, this approach?
Yeah, I love this question, and it's something that I talk about a lot with the people in my circle that are also going through the same ascension process that I am, but in their own way. So not grief, but they're ascending, they're being called to step into their gifts. So while I mentioned before that I was baptized at a very young age, I stepped away from the church very early in my adulthood. I stepped away because I saw it as more of a control over the community, and it did not sit well with me of what I felt like the purpose of I call true source. Everyone, for the most part, calls them, God, Allah, whatever your word is for the higher power. I call it true source just because I think God triggers a lot of people. Allah would trigger a lot of people. So true source is what I reference that. But I believe that there is an energetic field that is the power. And it resides in every single one of us. And that power, that energy, when we connect to each other, it is lightning. It is the most beautiful frequency. It's in our disconnection that I believe the negative forces, evil, if you will, wins. I think, people that are a part of a church, it's beautiful. If that's where you feel you're connected mostly to God, like stay there. Like do whatever you feel helps you ascend in that way for the collective, for humanity. For me, I believe that there are a lot of people coming out of the church atmosphere because man has damaged the church. It's not the church that was wrong. I believe God truly did want us to have community in a church-like setting. But I believe when he says church, I believe he means it as one in humanity. Like we are the church. So for me, that's how I move forward. I've never been a judgmental person. Like you could be an atheist and I'm still gonna love you, because I believe that's free will. That's our free choice.
Awesome. So just some closing thoughts on this part. We're gonna make some changes and then we're gonna move into a different type of recording.
Okay.
But just some final thoughts on this. What would you say to someone who is feeling like, whether they're going through grief or some other kind of very low vibrational point in their life, what would you say to someone that is feeling like they need to make a change? They just don't know where to start. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. All they know is that they have to get out of this stage that they're at right now.
Yeah.
And then how would you encourage them to get started with
the
program?
So I would say, first of all, isolate yourself from all surroundings. It isn't impossible. It's going to be my first advice. Like you're going to say, well, I can't because I have to work or I have family. There is some pockets of time that you can go somewhere, isolate yourself. When I say isolate yourself in a way that you would be feeling happy. Like for me, it's by the water. It's in nature. For you, it might be in a nook in your house with a book, Just get somewhere where you're by yourself, introspective, and no distractions. So no music, stop reading. A lot of people, I think, when they're really avoiding I call it like a tower moment where like everything falls down. For me, it was the death of my husband. When they're avoiding that, they're always going to be around people. They're always going to be distracted. They're not going to feel good being by themselves. So that's your first indication of that's what you need to do. Just be quiet. And I believe that through that, you will get, if you ask, you will receive. So if you ask for, what is my first step? And I always say, because I still do this now, tell me like I'm a preschooler. Like, I don't want the high-end college definition or the instructions or the step. I want it to be like a preschooler, like somebody with a minimal developed brain can follow the steps. And so I believe that's the download that you would get. Now, as far as like my program goes, I think that, if you feel called to join it, you can do it alone and you just order online. It comes to your doorstep and you do it. So, and it's, available for everybody.